Welcome back, everyone. Thank you for staying tuned with Brain Cherry's podcast. We are back with Adi, Susan, and Glen-Erik, founders of Pitek. Our chat with them covers how to start a business even in periods of crisis, how to grow it successfully, and all the strategies that you might be interested in if you're thinking about growing your own business. Here's the second part of our interview with them. So can you tell us maybe a little bit more about the differences between startups and bigger companies, but in terms of what should you do and what should you expect being a startup once you start growing?
Yeah, so I think in all aspects of the company, you have to think long-term and is what I'm doing scalable? And if it's not scalable, how can I make it scalable, right? Because at first you're always going to have things that obviously you can't scale, but you have to do. And if it's just totally unrealistic, then find a different way of doing it. Because you do have to think of the medium and long term when maybe you have to give that responsibility to someone else. At first, in a startup, all the decision making is very centralized. Right now, it's just us two working. Sometimes a startup can have just one person. Maybe it's 5 people, right? But at the same time, when you get to, let's say, 20 people or 100 people, you need to be able to decentralize that decision making and responsibilities. So in order to do that, everything has to be kind of scalable and easy to delegate. Knowing how to do that is very important when you're growing, and that you should do it, right? Because when you go from a small company to a large company or medium size, you might already be in that mindset of, because you were doing everything, now you have other people, maybe you're like micromanaging too much or things like that. So those are things that you have to watch out for and be able to delegate those responsibilities, not cling to control, right?
Yeah. And what about the scalability of products against the scalability of software? Because I've been reading quite a few interesting and debatable articles. Actually, one, it was yesterday morning from MIT, and basically they were pointing out the fact that, at least in their opinion, in Silicon Valley, startups have been concentrated in innovation, software innovation, and innovation in the areas of entertainment or things that they defined silly and not essential to life. And so they were pointing out the fact that why Silicon Valley, this was just an example, but was focusing so much in software technologies and not in real products. So I guess I have two different questions. One is, how do you scale a product instead of a software? And the second one is, if you agree that the majority of startups lately in the past few years have been focused on innovating in areas that are not so essential.
Yeah, so the first question, how do you scale a product instead of a software? They're actually somewhat similar, I would say. So but I'll focus on the product, obviously. So with a product, you have operations, you have a whole business behind it. So everything you do should be streamlined, right? So try to eliminate as many manual steps as possible. And from the manufacturing perspective, if you're making the product, the same thing. You have to streamline that manufacturing process, either with 5S or Six Sigma, other Six Sigma methodologies to kind of eliminate bottlenecks, reduce waste, and kind of have a more streamlined approach.
Do you mind explaining what these methodologies are? Because I think not everyone is familiar with those.
Yeah, so I can't remember all the 5 S's, but it's sort, simplify, streamline. I can't remember, but it's like a Kanban methodology where you kind of get rid of all of the unnecessary waste, inventory. Sometimes just sorting everything and finding a place for everything. When you buy, for example, a toolkit, right? The scissor has like a outline where the scissor goes, and all the tools have an outline where it goes, right? So you know, okay, like there's an outline there, the scissor's missing. Where is it? So it automatically tells you like that's I have to do something. So that kind of approach, you can implement it in manufacturing as well. So then maybe you have like a container where you have masks, right? And then that container is now empty. Oh, I need to order more masks or whatever, or need to make more filters or something. So having that kind of streamlined approach and kind of automatic way of telling you what you need to do is very important.
That makes a lot of sense.
Did you want to add something, Adi?
The three factors or the three big things that were the takeaway, I guess, from the operations class for me personally were pacing, batching, and buffering. So when you're trying to increase capacity, you're looking at like, okay, how is everything paced coming out? Because, for example, if we have the masks coming in, but we don't have the packaging coming in at the same time, then like my office will turn into just like huge piles of masks that we can't send out. And so having all of those things match up at the same time, I guess that's not so much scalable, like thinking about scalability at a large level, so much at a small level right now at least.
So this morning I was listening to another podcast, one from Tony Robbins, and he was basically interviewing a few different entrepreneurs and CEOs, and they were giving their 3 advices for companies or startups of any size actually to live this period of crisis and just how to deal with it in order to survive. And it was quite interesting because one of them actually pointed out that almost, I think it was 65% of the Fortune 1000 companies actually was born and grew to become successful in a period of crisis. So he was basically talking about these 4 seasons, well, the 4 seasons, but also the 4 seasons of business. And he was saying, well, what happens if you were born in winter, just like for people? So winter, maybe he was talking about winter as if a season in which everything goes wrong. But then if you were unlucky and you were born in that season and you cannot decide it, of course, like what should you do? Should you just give up? And just the fact that so many companies that made it to be in the Fortune 1000 were actually born in a period of crisis was quite shocking to me. So I wanted to know, what are your thoughts about this?
I actually love that podcast. I don't know if it's the same episode that the one that you listened to is the one that I listened to, but in 2008 recession, my family lost everything. So I was supposed to be taking over my parents' business, but it ended up not working out because it didn't survive that recession. So after that, I really became obsessed with how do you make a startup recession proof? And I guess that's kind of what guided me into where I am today with always looking at like revenue and sales growth of startups, because I saw firsthand that startup founders can lose everything if they don't have that. And I think for this startup, something that did appeal to me when Glen-Erik approached me with this is, firstly, there's an epidemic of some sort every 2 to 3 years. And we have recessions also have their own cycle. But if we make something that's designed to do well in epidemics and perform at a standard rate in the off years, then I think we're on a good trajectory for the long-term success of our business. And so launching this during a winter, an economic winter, I think is going to set us up for success, especially since the business is designed to help people get out of winter. Because a lot of businesses right now, like they can't conduct regular business because it's just not safe. And so having a solution that's designed to help people get back to where they can safely conduct business, I think it just helps us to not only survive and thrive in winter, but it helps other people to push through winter faster.
Connected to that, actually, I was listened to an interview of ex-CEO of Luxottica, and basically he was saying how he was surprised that after only a month and a half of lockdown, so many businesses were going down. And he was saying that one of the main problems is actually the management of cash flow. And his theory is that minimum you have to have 3 months of cash flow in order to be considered like a stable company. Of course, apart from being like having a good capital and a good income statement. What is your take on this? What do you think in a startup context is a good amount of safe cash to have set aside for moments of crisis?
So it's hard to really even know what a month of spending is for a startup because it varies so much, especially at the beginning, right? Like if you just started, you don't really know how much you're going to spend, but you do have like a budget, right? So having that economic backing is important. So in business school, we learn, okay, like in an ideal world, your cash flow is zero because everything's balanced and you don't have cash flow sitting around, right?
Right.
But at the same time, that's not possible. So ideally, you do have some lines of credit. So then in those cases, you can increase your cash flow dynamically as needed. So you don't have a bunch of cash sitting around just costing you money, because having cash sitting around costs money too. It's lost opportunity cost of cash. Mm-hmm. But then if you have a line of credit, then you can flex that. So that's kind of what Royal Caribbean did, the company where I work. They have a line of credit to move through this crisis, right? So, and that's what they're leveraging. So it's interesting way of dealing with cash flow, because even a big company like Royal Caribbean, where there's lots of expenses and right now there's like zero revenue, they can still use that as a means to fulfill their cash flow needs.
I also have a question that is related to something that Adi was talking about before, actually. So you were pointing out correctly that another fact that is making this strange period of time promising for your startup is also because you're helping people. And so your business is strictly focused with what's going on at the moment. But what if we wanted to generalize this approach to the same kind of startup, but not in a moment in which necessarily you're producing something that is in need in this specific moment? How do you then think that even if it's a period of crisis, it might still be a good moment for you?
First and foremost, when you launch a business, you have to think about your end consumer's mindset when you're launching that business. What sort of state of mind are they in? And how can you help them when they're in that current state of mind? So like a psychiatrist is looking for people who are in a downward spiral, or people who are in a downward spiral realizing that they need help. And when they connect with those people, that's where they have their business. If your business is helping people to feel safe during a pandemic, then you want to connect with them at that level. If your business is helping people who are tired of being trapped in their apartment to get outside safely, then you want to emotionally connect with people at that level. So no matter what type of business you're looking to launch, you need to emotionally connect with people where they currently are. And if no one is currently at an emotional or like mental headspace where they want to connect with the type of business you want to launch, then you need to find a way to adjust your value proposition or your product offering to be something that people currently want. Because at the end of the day, we're emotional beings, and those emotions that release hormones in our brains have helped us to survive thousands of years. They've helped us to become one of the dominant species on this planet. So you don't want to say, oh, I'm going to ignore my emotions. No, if you're feeling fear, your body's protecting you from something. So if you want to get out and you want to explore, but you're afraid to, how can we equip them to not be afraid anymore? So that's kind of what you want to look at. If you're launching anything in a crisis, well, what is the crisis? Are people afraid of their financial situation? How can your startup be a solution to help them not? If you're launching during a pandemic, people are afraid of dying, or they're afraid of getting infected and accidentally infecting one of their relatives. How can you help them with that fear and mitigate whatever's causing that fear?
Yeah, absolutely. It's exactly what I was hoping that your feedback would be, because buying emotionally, so the emotional part of buying is actually something that we also touched upon with Erika in one of the previous episodes. And it's something that comes up so often when you talk business, and like so many people from different areas of expertise say you don't actually sell the product, kind of you sell the feeling or the emotion that it's behind the product, or something that is making people feel like they are better off, but from an emotional and personal point of view, rather than just what they need.
What have you learned in these couple of weeks that you have been in business? Could be, mistakes you have made, if you are willing to share, or anything that you'd like to share for our listeners. I'm pretty sure that there are so many people that would love to start a business, and, given it's so fresh, I'm sure you're still in the phase where you're learning a lot. So yeah, whatever you want to share with us, I think is going to be extremely important.
Yeah, so I think one of the things that's very important is to keep the objective in mind, and we were talking about this earlier, Adi and I, where you can't, especially if you're have a co-founder, right, which is also very important. Like, I don't think you should go at things on your own, because you're going to end up missing something where someone else is going to be able to kind of tell you, hey, like, what about this, right? And in our case, like, when you already have a co-founder, it's important to keep an open mind and keep the objective in mind, because let's say I have an opinion or Adi has an opinion and we disagree. Obviously that happens, right? But if we think about like what we're trying to solve, then that's how we find peace or like agreement between us, right? So like we're trying to solve a problem, so that's what we're discussing. We're not trying to just further our being right, so that's an important mindset to have. That it's kind of like when you're in a company, or you're trying to, or should, even as an employee, further an objective, not just be right, and that's kind of important. And I think another point that Adi made earlier is also important, to have that traction, where instead of just working on a product and then months later seeing who your target market is, or assuming that it's the same as you had thought, kind of like doing a very agile approach where you show them like a MVP, or in our case, because we have suppliers, we can show them actual products and know which one people want. That's very important as well. And obviously with some companies it's harder, where they have to come up with something new, like let's say Magic Leap. How are they going to know who their target market is, or how that kind of technology is going to be used? But in general, it's good to have like that kind of agile approach to as a startup.
Makes a lot of sense.
We also, I was joking with Glen-Erik after we negotiated with all of our suppliers. I feel like we've earned degrees in international supply chain management, just with everything that we thought we knew going in and what we actually like ended up learning throughout the whole time. And something else that I think has worked really well for us that could be used by other startups is sometimes we don't necessarily agree on something, so we test out both options. Like, we didn't agree on a website build out, so we tested out both options and left both live to see which one got further traction. And I mean, that's A/B testing for you. It's, hey, one of these ideas is going to work, but we're not sure which one. Let's just test them both. It's really like a game of, the relay race where like you're passing the baton on to somebody.
And you're like running and then Yeah,
like sometimes I just get completely like flustered with something like, okay, I do not understand this right now. It might be because I'm running on 2 hours of sleep. It might be because it's just confusing for my brain. Can you look at this? And like he'll come in and in 2 seconds he'll be able to fix it, or vice versa. Like, hey, I have to step into 5 meetings right now. Can you just jump on this? This is like, take the baton and just carry it as far as you can. And we kind of have been like throwing that back and forth, which I think has helped a lot with in the have a co-founder versus launching solo aspect.
Yeah, at the same time, even if you start with a co-founder or with a group, I believe that you have to share these traits, like the common traits of enjoying the other's opinion, even if you don't agree. That's so important. So working with another person doesn't make it better per se. It makes starting off better and easier, I think, if you both share the same view and the same principle of cooperating rather than wanting to be right just because you want to be right.
Yeah, absolutely. I think something that's also helped for us is we both grew up with siblings, close in age. So, like, from a very young age, it's been ingrained into our brain, like, the co-founder concept. So, okay, I might not agree with you. I might be annoyed with what you just said, but I will, like, go chill out and get back on the phone in 30 minutes, like, decompressed, or, like, there are a few times where I've been like really frustrated because we get these tiny obstacles, and I know that I can turn to Glen-Erik and I can vent about it. Like, are you effing kidding me? How can this effing be happening right now? Like, just with getting like certain supplies that like pre-crisis we would have been able to get so easily. It's just like these stupid little roadblocks now, and we're able to like turn to each other as friends and kind of just like, okay, you take a breath, I'll carry the baton, and I'll see you back online in like an hour. Just like take some time to decompress. But that's been like very helpful for us. Or the other thing is we have a Trello board, so we can see when someone's stuck. So like sometimes something will be on my in progress list or his in progress list, and then it'll move to the someone do ASAP list, which means it's the other person's turn to like try to knock some more out of whatever the task is.
How has it been to work, basically create this company and work remotely? Have you found any difficulties, or it's been smooth so far? I mean, you talked about Trello, which is, a popular platform for, just managing different tasks. I'm sure you're using other, communication technologies, but I think it'd be great for our audience to understand, it is still possible to create a company even without seeing each other, and even in a moment where maybe not everyone is available to do business with you because of it's a special situation.
Yeah, so I think we're both kind of used to working through the computer anyways, like in our day jobs and other past responsibilities. So I don't feel like it's been a big impediment. But also, yesterday was actually the first time we saw each other in a few months, I guess. Just to exchange inventory. So yeah, that was interesting. Because I was like, okay, like hadn't really seen each other, even if we like talk every day and stuff like that. But yeah, so it does. I think it depends on what business you're trying to launch, and what the responsibilities are, how people work, right? Like if you're used to working remotely or not.
think something that's helped for us a lot. So I learned this from my dad. He had a lot of partnerships throughout my childhood, and the ones that succeeded, they had some sort of board. I mean, this was before Trello, but they had a board where they would say like what they were working on and what they had completed that week, and they organized it week by week. And the partners where he did that, no one felt like the other one wasn't working as hard, and the partnerships ended up lasting a lot longer. And the partnerships where he didn't do that, I noticed that, and he also would explain this to us, that those partnerships tended not to do well because the other partner always feels like they're doing more work, and they end up resenting their co-founder. And so something that we did immediately from the get-go, just from learning from my parents' mistakes or their life lessons learned, was we had the Trello board by calendar week, and then we said, okay, this is what we're working on, period, like trying to get done ASAP, and then this is what we've completed this week. And by having that, we're able to see that, okay, like, yeah, I stayed up till 4 a.m. last night getting all of these things done, and maybe he didn't stay up till 4 a.m., but I'm not going to hate him for it because he worked all day Saturday while I slept. And so we take this this Trello board tally kind of helps us to see like, okay, we're both grinding, but we have different ways in which we work best. So we're putting in like our loads of work at like different times.
Good. Well, guys, you shared with us so many things. I'm sure our audience is going to be thrilled. And I was personally so interested in hearing what you had to say. Like, honestly, I could have gone on for another couple of hours, but I don't want you to waste your whole Sunday.
Yeah, they need to go sell products, so I work on the business. So.
Well, then, best of luck. I'm not sure whether we can buy some masks from you because we're not in the US at the moment. But we'll for sure tell all our friends in the US that if they want some quality masks and products, they should check out your website. Absolutely.
Great. And that's pitek.co in case anyone wants to buy some masks or UV1.
Absolutely. Yeah, we'll put the link in the description of the podcast and on all our social medias.
This concludes the second part of our interview with Adi and Glen-Erik, founders of Pitek. It was so exciting for us to learn everything about the strategies that you need to launch a startup and grow it successfully. We hope that you enjoyed it. We're also super excited to interview our next guest in a few days. So we hope you'll stay tuned and we'll see each other very soon. Bye!